had our Genesis reading, and I appreciate that. At the other two churches, I get to read all of, so I appreciate having an opportunity for one of them to be read here. I do want us to read, though, Mark 1, 9 through 15, and 1 Peter 3, verses 18 through 22, and I want to reverse the order from what's on the screen because of the timeline that we have here. And Genesis came first, and then Mark, and then 1 Peter. Mark says, "About that time, Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee, and John baptized him in the Jordan River. While he was coming up out of the water, Jesus saw heaven splitting open, and the Spirit, like a dove, coming down on him. And there was a voice from heaven, 'You are the Son, whom I dearly love. In you I find happiness.' At once the Spirit forced Jesus out into the wilderness. He was in the wilderness for 40 days, tempted by Satan. He was among the wild animals, and the angels took care of him. After John was arrested, Jesus came into Galilee, announcing God's good news, saying, 'Now the time has come. Here comes God's kingdom. Change your hearts and your lives and trust this good news.'" And then from 1 Peter 3, 18 through 22, we have, "Christ himself suffered on account of sins, once for all, the righteous on behalf of the unrighteous. He did this in order to bring you into the presence of God. Christ was put to death as a human, but made alive by the Spirit. And it was by the Spirit that he went to preach to the spirits in prison. In the past, those spirits were disobedient, when God patiently waited during the time of Noah. Noah built an ark in which a few, that is 8, lives were rescued through water. Baptism is like that. It saves you now, not because it removes dirt from your body, but because it is the mark of the good conscience toward God. Your salvation comes through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who is at God's right hand. Now that he has gone into heaven, he rules over all the angels, authorities, and powers." This is the word of God for us, the people of God. Thanks be to God. I know Gary likes quotes, so I'm hoping that Gary gets this one straight off. And if he doesn't, I'm hoping somebody else gets it, because the last two churches have looked at me like I'm crazy. I mean, that's a given, but you don't normally look at me that way. So Gary, here it is. I love it when a plan comes together. Do you have it, Gary? What is it? You're right. So A-Team. I feel this way every Friday that we do the food at Phoenix, because I'm thinking, okay, do we have enough time to get the meat done and then get the bread in? And then when we start to leave, I fuss and fuss and fuss, and then we get there and it's like, okay, who's got the whatever it is? This past time was, who's got the ice? And I kept saying, do you have the ice? And they said, no, we don't have the ice. I said, do you have the ice? No, we don't have the ice. I said, Gary, do you have the ice? He said, yes. So I love it when a plan comes together and everything's perfect and everything's fine. But you fret in the meantime. You come up with this plan and you're hoping that it works. And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. If you've ever been in education or mental health, then you'll know that every student has a plan. Every person that you work with, every client has a plan. And for Lee, it may be a plan for a year for her to learn to tie her shoes. And 6 months of that plan may be working on getting Lee to get her shoes on her feet. And then taking the shoestrings in her hand. And so it takes a while sometimes to get things done. I've learned that Velcro is much easier, if y'all want to know the truth. Why does a person have to learn to tie their shoes when we have Velcro? But there has to be a plan, right? We as a church have to have a plan, a vision of what we're going to do. But y'all, God has a plan for us. And guess what plan we are? Are we the A plan? We're the B plan. We are plan B. What was the A plan? The Jewish people. They were the ones that Jesus thought, this is the way that my plan is going to work. And it didn't work. And so we are plan B. We're the backup. We are the people who have received the grace of God. But we have to be willing to give our hearts. It's not something that's free. We have to be willing to give something up. For some of us, we like to collect stuff, don't we? And that stuff becomes the center of our attention. I had a friend of mine at one church, and they had a big house, and their house was full of stuff. And so one day the man decided he had so much stuff that he needed to buy a building to put it in. I can see Jack and Nana doing this. So Jack says to Nana, I need a building to put more stuff in. Not you. Well, that's where Nana comes in and says, well, Jack, if you get a building, I get a building. Well, and this couple did. So they got 2 buildings. So they have a house and 2 buildings. Well, the husband filled his building with stuff and found that it was too full of stuff. And so he goes back and he says, I need another building. Well, she says, well, if you get one, I get one too. They spent their life and are still spending their life collecting stuff. Now, what do you do with that stuff? If I went out today and found a good buy on overalls, they were 50 cents a pair. And I bought 50 pair of overalls and I brought them back here and said, look, guys, I brought 50 pair of overalls, 50 cents each. Isn't that special? What good would they do me? Have y'all ever seen me wear overalls? Hopefully you will not ever see me wear overalls. You may one day. But it's not something that I wear. It's not something that I use. So why would I buy it to stuff it somewhere? Some of us have a life that we give our heart to looking for stuff. We want to find more stuff. And why do we have to have more stuff? That stuff doesn't do anything for us, does it? But we have a plan. We want to be able to find more stuff. Several years ago when I was a kid, I know a lot of years ago, when I grew up, General Daniel Morgan was our hero. And we grew up understanding that General Morgan had the perfect plan. And that is why, and if y'all do not know this, you will now, Cowpens was the turning point of the American Revolution. No, it wasn't. Everywhere else says they are too. But all of these years, I had this thing in my mind that, General Daniel Morgan, he led his troops into battle. He did all this battle strategy, and he was this and this and this. And we grew up thinking that he was this wonderful man. And from the first grade on, we were taught about how wonderful General Daniel Morgan was. Well, when I gave birth to my first child, in the hospital, there were 2 channels on television. You could watch the news or you could watch public television. And they were doing a documentary on General Daniel Morgan. I was so excited because he was like this grand hero. He was fantastic. And I was going to get to see all of this stuff that I had been taught my entire life. They were going to have the Battle of Cowpens. They were going to do all this stuff. I was so excited because General Daniel Morgan had a plan. And it was a good plan. Do you know what I found out from this documentary? Daniel Morgan's plan went like this. All right, all you guys, y'all are going down the hill into that hole. And y'all are going to fight. And you have 2 options. You either stand and you fight and you get shot, or you turn around and run and I'm going to shoot you. That was his battle strategy. Let them shoot you or I'm going to shoot you. One or the other, it's all good. And then there came a time where there was a lot of confusion and everybody just got all messed up and ended up circling the enemy by accident. This was not General Morgan's plan. And guess what? They won the battle by accident. It had nothing to do with General Morgan. Is that not amazing? The best laid plans, right? And he had his plan and it didn't work. But what worked was what worked for them. I remember in high school, we grew up and there were two rivals, Cowpens and Packlet. If you were from Cowpens and you met somebody from Packlet, you were supposed to instantly hate them just for the fact that they're from Packlet. It didn't matter who they were. It didn't matter what they were. It's just the fact of where they were geographically from. Likewise, if you're from Packlet and you met somebody from Cowpens, you were to hate them too. It's just the way it was. Well, they built Broome High School, and guess what areas it brought together? Cowpens and Packlet, and they stuck us in the same school together. Well, after a year of trying to figure this out and why they would torture us by doing this, the school found out a lot of things about each other, the students did. A lot of us grew up in the same places. We grew up in mill villages, and we grew up hard. And we would fight for what was right. Now, if it wasn't right, we just let it go. But if we had to fight for something, it had to be what was right. Well, you get a football team out of this, and you get a bunch of scrawny, know nothing, do nothing, work in the fields in the summer, and that's pretty much it, high school kids, against Spartanburg High School, who I think imported giants, because it looked like our guys would come out on the field, they looked like little ants, and then here comes Spartanburg High School, and they're like these huge guys, and they're a 4A, and we're a 3A, and I don't know how we got so blessed to play them. It was one of those games that didn't count, but we got to play them anyway. And every year we were told, Cowpens is going to lose. Well, you're telling these bunch of kids that have nothing that they're going to lose because these guys are bigger? But our folks had the heart. Our folks would not let go. And they would fight as hard as they could and as long as they could. And they usually won the game. And it never made sense to me because the other team was so big and we were so the underdog. How many of you watched the movie 300? Excellent movie. The Persians go to war, and there's 300 men, and they're going to fight King Xerxes' army. And King Xerxes has this massive army of never-ending guys. But the plan that the Persians has is to have this little, basically a hole in the mountain, and you plug up the hole. And if you plug up the hole, nobody can go through it, right? So here are these 300 guys that stop the invasion just because they have the heart to know that they want to continue freedom and that they want to protect their families. Having a plan and following a plan takes putting your heart into it. This meal that we celebrate this morning, this is Plan B. This is Christ's blood for each of us. This is his heart for each of us. And all he asks us is simply, will you be willing to do the same? Will you be willing to give your heart because I've given my heart for you? Isn't it exciting to think that God has a plan for you? To me, it's both really exciting and it's really frustrating because I think about the fact that God has a plan for me, and then I think about the fact that God had a plan for me a long time ago when I wasn't giving my heart to him. And I think of all the opportunities that I've missed, the difference that could have come out of that I should have done. But God knows now that he has my heart and that he can do whatever he wants to with me. Have you given God your all today? Have you told him that stuff isn't important? That being popular isn't important? The thing that's important is your relationship with him. Can he work with you Can he tell you what to do, where to go? What if he asks us to go overseas? What if he asks us to go to a dirty place, to a third world country? Would we be willing to go? What if he asks us just simply to go down the road to feed the folks at Phoenix? Are we willing to go? God has a plan to use us. But in order for that to work, we have to be willing to give him our heart. As we go into this Lenten season, I ask you, have you given your heart to God? Have you told him that you will be fully and truly his, just as he is fully and truly yours? That is what this table is about this morning. God gave his Son so that we might have forgiveness and salvation. But he asked us in return to give ourselves. Are you willing to give of yourself? Amen.